There's an issue that is going on throughout the country that has gotten very little attention, even though I think it deserves quite a lot. And it involves the pattern of red state governors, Republican governors, who have long heralded themselves as believers in the free market. The government doesn't intervene and tell you what you can do and what you can eat. It's not a nanny state. It's not there to take care of you and force you to do things that they think is healthy. It's about an economy that allows competition, free competition in the marketplace so that consumers can decide which they want and let the best company or the best product win. And yet, because people are starting to realize how repulsive factory farming is, how morally repulsive in terms of the breeding of billions of animals, sentient animals, complex, socially complex and very smart animals, who they torture for years before leading them to the slaughterhouse. They're bred just to be factory farm animals. They never go outside. The only time they ever see the outdoors is when they are put on the truck to the slaughterhouse. And we've talked many times before about how morally reprehensible it is to subject these majestic animals, beautiful animals. Family farming has always been about killing the animal at the end to make food, but along the way, the family farm value is you treat your animals very well. It keeps them healthier and happier, and that has always been part of you don't torture your animals on a family farm. But in industrial factory farming, that's what it's all about. It's industrialized. It has nothing to do with farming, actually. We call it factory farms. It doesn't resemble a farm at all. And in fact, it's destroying family farms. But this is a very powerful industry, very powerful. They spread money to every governor of every red state where they exist. And then those governors turn around and say, you know what? We're deeply concerned that people are starting to be disgusted by factory farms, not just morally, but also in terms of the health risks. These factory farms are filled with disease because of how these animals are kept. They're pumped full of antibiotics, which can easily create an antibiotic-resistant infection or virus that can spread into a pandemic. The dumping is extremely hazardous. People finally are realizing how repulsive factory farms are. And so, but at the same time, not everyone wants to be vegan and just give up meat. So there's this middle ground where you can now take animals and just take certain cells from their body and then replicate it in a lab. You cultivate the cells, you replicate it, you nourish it, and then it turns into meat because it's taking the cells, the foundation of meat, but you don't have to cut down zillions of trees and deforest the planet to make room for cows or have huge numbers of cows whose farting actually causes a great deal of environmental destruction. And most of all, you don't have to breed billions of animals and then kill them because you're just taking their cells. Now, you don't have to be somebody who finds that, appealing. You can buy factory farm meat. No one's trying to prevent you from doing that, despite all the studies showing how unhealthy it is. I think that's your choice. If you want to eat Doritos or sodas all day long, chocolate, and McDonald's and fast food, whatever. I'm not here to make those dietary choices for you, and nor should the government be. But the same is true for people who want to eat lab-grown meat. And there's companies that have been exploding wildly because they like the taste of it, and the studies all show that it's very safe. It's been approved by the FDA. It's been approved by food agencies in many other countries, including Singapore and Israel, which led the way, and now places in Europe as well. But what's so important to note here is that when these red state governors are banning the selling of or the consuming of lab-grown meat, they're not even claiming a health concern. They're not saying we're banning it because we think it's unhealthy. Because they can't. There's no science to support that. That's why it's been approved. That's not even their claim. So if you think, oh yeah, lab-grown meat should be banned because it's unhealthy, that seems a little bit nanny state-ish to me. I mean, I could start a campaign tomorrow saying ban McDonald's or fast food because it's very unhealthy. Studies show that. But generally, we don't ban food that other people want to consume based on that. But in this case, that's not even what's claimed by any of these governors. They're admitting the reason they want to ban lab-grown meat is to protect the meat industry, meat producers in their state. In other words, helping that industry, which often funds these governors and these legislatures, by banning their competition. So yeah, an industry will thrive if you have the government making it a crime, as these bills do, for consumers to buy any competing products. I don't know how anyone could possibly justify this. Here's Montana Governor Greg Gianforte, who's become the newest governor of 5 or 6 different Republican states. He announced on Twitter, quote, "So-called lab-grown meat has no place in Montana. By signing HB 401 into law, I am proud to defend our way of life and the hard-working Montana ranchers who produce the best beef in the world." I never realized before that the Montana way of life was to have the state dictate to people what food they can and can't consume. In fact, Montana is not just a deeply red state, it's one of the most libertarian states. It has that ethos of the Northwest, states like Idaho as well, that we don't want the federal government or any government coming in and telling us what we can and can't do. Let the free market decide that. Here's the official release of the State of Montana newsroom, the title of which was "Governor Gianforte Bans Lab-Grown Meat in Montana." And I want you to listen to what they say is the reason and what they don't say is the reason for this. Because when I talked about this on social media, I had a zillion people coming and saying, lab-grown meat is not healthy. I couldn't get through the message. This is not even the claim that the governor is making when banning it. One of the things that drives me crazy, it always has, is when citizens want to defend some politician's actions and they invent excuses or rationale to defend it that not even the politician himself is claiming. That's not the purpose of this law, to ban unhealthy food. They don't even claim it's unhealthy. Governor Gianforte bans lab-grown meat in Montana. Quote, "Montana Farm Bureau celebrates the governor signing House Bill 401. That's the Association of Meat Producers. Sponsored by Representative Braxton Mitchell, a Republican from Columbia Falls, House Bill 401 prohibits the manufacture for sale, or the distribution of cell-cultured edible products. The bill defines cell-cultured edible products as, quote, "the concept of meat, including but not limited to muscle cells, fat cells, connective tissue, blood, and other components produced via cell culture rather than from a whole slaughtered animal." That's what they're protecting, the industry that mass slaughters animals. Why don't they have to compete like every other industry? Starting October 1st, any retail food establishment in Montana that manufactures, sells, or distributes cell culture edible products is subject to suspension of their license and could be found guilty of a misdemeanor and face with fines and imprisonment. Imprisonment if convicted. Quote, "As chairman of the House Agriculture Committee and someone whose family has been involved in Montana's meat processing industry for over 80 years, I'm proud the governor signed House Bill 401 into law," Representative Mitchell said. Quote, "Agriculture is our state's #1 industry, and this bill takes a clear stand to protect our ranchers and food supply. We won't let synthetic products with misleading labels undercut the hard work of Montana's farm and ranch families." The Montana Farm Bureau Federation praised the signing of the legislation, thanking the governor and legislatures for defending and protecting the Montana way of life. Quote, "Montana ranchers grow some of the best meat in the world. We are thrilled consumers in the Treasure State will continue to enjoy authentic meat. Thank you to the legislature and Governor Gianforte for supporting ranchers and consumers with this new law," said Montana Farm Bureau Federation President Cindy Johnson. So they're admitting that this is only done to protect the industry that funds them from having to compete with any other possible alternatives to their food. They're saying, oh, because of this law, Montana's residents will continue to enjoy high-quality meat produced the way we've always produced it, by slaughtering huge numbers of animals. Without this bill, they could enjoy that meat. They could still buy that meat if they want it. The difference is they could also buy alternatives to meat. again, that have been approved by the FDA. That's where food approval takes place and medication approval takes place, is on the federal level. And it's a very rigorous process to approve new foods. And as I said, it's not just the United States, but many other serious countries that have approved this as well. Here's an article from Reason in, and by the way, yeah, I should also say that, as I said before, this is not the first state that's done it. North Carolina has done this, has banned lab-grown meat. So has Alabama, and so has Florida. And our guest tonight, who's Emma Camp, the associate editor of Reason, has written extensively about that, and we will be here. She'll be here shortly to talk about it. Just let me go through a little bit. Here from Reason, March 2025, North Carolina is the latest state to try to restrict lab-grown meat. Cultivated meat isn't challenging slaughtered meat anytime soon, but states keep trying to restrict competition. That's the other thing. If lab-grown meat is so disgusting, you think, and you think it's so horrible and nobody would want to eat it, that's all the more reason why you don't have to ban it. If everybody really wants to eat meat through slaughtered animals, they can. Why not let the free market decide? Why not let people who want to buy lab-grown meat make their own choices about their diet? Would you want the state coming in and looking at your diet and deciding what parts they think are unhealthy? And most Americans have a lot of unhealthy food in their diet, and saying, this is banned, this cannot be sold in any stores. If a store sells Doritos or Coke, then it will be subject to fines and the loss of its license and even imprisonment. So now you're a citizen, an adult citizen, you've always eaten that food, you want to go to the store and buy it, but the state has said, sorry, you can't eat this food in our state. People would be screaming bloody murder, especially conservatives, who have screamed bloody murder at far less intrusive attempts than this. But because it has become kind of an ethos in conservative politics to love meat, venerating meat, which is fine, venerate meat all you want, a lot of people just reflexively reacted to this like, yeah, animal slaughtered meat is way better than lab-grown meat. Which is fine to think that, but how you then get to this non sequitur that therefore the state should ban the food I dislike for anyone to use is just mystifying. Here from Reason in May of 2024, 1 year ago, Alabama governor signs bill banning lab-grown meat. Lab-grown meat bans don't protect consumers, but they do protect ranchers and farmers from competition. Exactly. That's what this is all about. Pure corporate corruption. Pouring money into the coffers of state legislators and governors, and then getting bills that ban their competition. So they essentially have a monopoly. The only choice you have is, if you want to eat meat, is meat from factory farms. Here from Reason, also a year ago, May 2024, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, signs a bill banning lab-grown meat in Florida. While the government framed the legislation as necessary to protect Floridians from the, quote, global elite, he's the real authoritarian. And I should note, none of these governors, including DeSantis, even pretended to be banning lab-grown meat due to health concerns. They all admitted, like the Montana governor did, as we just showed you, that the only purpose of this is to protect the meat industry from competition. Now, there is no evidence, by the way, of health risks from eating lab-grown meat. There's a ton of evidence about how sick red meat can make you if you consume it in excess. Heart disease and strokes and all kinds of coronary problems, diabetes, especially from other junk food as well. But there are no studies, and the studies that exist say that lab-grown meat is safe, which is why the USDA approved it. Here from ABC News, June of 2023, USDA approves first ever, quote, cell-cultivated meat for 2 American manufacturers. Upside will cultivate and sell chicken grown from animal cells in bioreactors. After years of research and rigorous testing, cell-cultivated meat will officially become part of the U.S. food system. Emeryville, California-based manufacturer Upside, which gave ABC News a look inside its facilities earlier this year, and Good Meat, a cultivated meat division of the plant-based egg substitute food technology company Eat Just, are the first USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, approved cell-cultivated chicken meat produced and has been fully approved by U.S. government for commercial sales nationwide. I'm going to get to that with Emma as well. There's a constitutional clause called the Interstate Commerce Clause, that's designed to make sure states aren't engaged in protectionism against other states. The idea is we're supposed to have an economy where all states have the same interstate commerce, and one state can't, say, ban all products from any other state in order to protect Florida the way the U.S. can and is doing now with tariffs. It's a violation of the Constitution. Just to give you one example of some of these studies from the Library of Congress, September of 2023, cell-cultivated meat, an overview. First approvals on Upside Food and Good Meat on November 16, 2022. The FDA completed its first pre-market consultation with Upside Food for a cell-cultivated meat product for human consumption. Upside Food submitted information to the FDA on its process to develop cultivated chicken. The FDA evaluated the company's production process, including taking cells from chickens and establishing cell banks, manufacturing control for these controlled environments, and the inputs that would be added to the controlled environment. The FDA stated that after our careful evaluation of the data and information shared by the firm, we have no further questions at this time about the firm's safety conclusions. On March 21st, 2023, the FDA completed its second pre-market consultations for Good Meat on its process to develop cell-cultivated chicken. The FDA evaluated the materials submitted by Good Meat and determined it had no further questions about the company's safety conclusions. But as I said, safety issues are what people who support these bills are now trying to raise retroactively to justify it. None of these governors is pretending it's about health concerns. They're not saying lab-grown meat isn't healthy. They're saying we need to do this to make sure that this factory farm industrial meat or meat providers in our state are protected by eliminating all the competition, by making it a criminal offense to consume competition. And the fact that it's coming from a party that has long claimed to be the party of free market, that has backlashed when Michelle Obama, as First Lady, just tried to encourage students to exercise more and to eat better. And conservatives went berserk saying, who was Michelle Obama to tell us how to live our lives and what to eat and what to exercise? And that wasn't even coercive. That was just encouragement. There was another time Michael Bloomberg, as mayor of New York City, just tried to put limits on the size of sodas because fast food restaurants are selling these gigantic mega sodas. And there's few things worse for you and that also trigger addiction to it than sodas. And conservatives said this was the nanny state, this is paternalism. Sean Hannity went on multiple rants against Michelle Obama and against Michael Bloomberg, but this isn't anything close to that. It's far worse. It's making the criminal law punish the consumption of lab-grown meat for people who actually want to consume it. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.